Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather, and as we've said a few times now, Preston is off gallivanting around London, but together we lead Centered, firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation, coaching, and strategy. Today's guest brings some clarity, some systems thinking, and a human first approach to one of the biggest challenges leaders are facing right now: how to scale performance in an era where technology is moving faster than people can keep up. AI is a big part of this, but I'm sure there's a lot more we're going to dig into. So I'm thrilled to welcome Mickey Anderson, entrepreneur, organizational performance advisor, and founder of LoyaltyOps, which is a system designed to help leaders turn culture into a measurable competitive advantage. She's spent more than a decade helping growth stage companies scale responsibly by aligning people, behavior, and decision making so innovation doesn't collapse under its own weight. Mickey has helped companies navigate everything from AI overload to cultural drift, and she's here to share what it really takes to drive consistent performance when organizations are under pressure to move fast, which in today's world isn't. Mickey, I'm super excited to have a culture conversation. As we were talking about before we got started, that's kind of one of my sweet spots for topics. So I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So maybe to jump right in, so many senior teams, senior leadership maybe struggle with this differentiation between a high performing team and a high performing culture. I'm curious from your perspective, why does that distinction matter so much? What do leaders need to be considering?
I love this question because you're right. In every organization I've gone into over the past decade, the question is, how do we get better performing teams? But ultimately, a team is person dependent. When we think of a team, it's a group of individuals who come together to accomplish a purpose, a task, a mission, whatever that might be. But those individuals are the contributors to that team, and they function together with their own standards, their own goals, etc. A culture goes beyond the people. So you can take a player out and put someone else in and know that you have the culture, the structure in terms of communication, decision making, and behaviors that will set that person up for success to be able to function within that group. So culture is much bigger and broader than just the individuals within it. It's the systems that guide, that shape, and that contribute to the positive momentum that a team has. So we can't really have one, well, we can have one without the other. But in terms of sustainment, as you scale and grow your teams, much more effective to have a culture set up that's going to set all of your teams up for success across the organization. So we're not just key person or key player dependent.
Well, and it's interesting to hear you talk about that because I think I see so many founders or small startups have like a really great core team that functions really well, but they've never really defined the culture. And then they go to scale and they add another team and they wonder why that team struggles so much. And they don't realize they never really thought about what the culture is, how it works. I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that those founders, those people that need to scale, whether they're small, medium, or large, how should they look at like cultural standards? How can they make it tangible, measurable, and maybe most importantly, how can they make it repeatable?
Yeah. And I love this. I think we call it the OG syndrome. So you have your key group of OG, your original team members who are the culture. They are the organization, right? They together are what shaped and created the magic that made you special, that got you to where you are. But what got you here won't get you there. And so what we
Right.
need to remember is it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult in order to get everyone on board. It just needs to be clear. And so where we
Mm.
start is what we call clear intent. And we've borrowed this philosophy from the military. My husband's a special operations assaulter. And so we pull a lot of insights from military in terms of performance and structures and love this. Clear intent's all about ensuring everyone within an organization understands and can recite without thought the four key things that make you who you are. It's who we are, what we do, why we do it, and where we're going. And if everyone in an organization knows those four things, understands them, and can recite them, that gives them clarity and autonomy to work towards what we would call mission command, right? The overarching goal. As long as we're moving in the general direction, people are empowered, they make faster, stronger decisions, and it allows you to bring people in and give them clarity very, very quickly. So that's phase one. Once we understand those four things, now getting everyone on board with how they operate, what our cultural standards are, as we call them, that's the next phase. And this, again, is not complicated. It just takes some
Mm,
time. It's understanding what the company's core values are. But then within that, how do we communicate and behave in alignment with that? This is the part that everyone misses. They slap the core values on the wall and create some posters and think that that's going to be our culture. Amazing. No. What we need to do is understand that there are two key components to each one of your values. There's how we communicate it, as we call it, the heuristics. These are the catchphrases, the sayings, the way we check ourselves quickly. Slow is
mm.
smooth, smooth is fast, right? That no matter what I'm doing within an organization, I can remind someone or think that thing and know exactly what that means in behavior. And then for each role within the organization, what are the behaviors that are in alignment and not in alignment with those core values? If those are standardized, if those are ongoing communication, if there's training related to that, you know that everyone knows what we're doing, what the goal is, and we know how we're going to behave as we go towards that. And that is everything in terms of how you
Mhm.
scale a high performing culture and establish high performing teams within it.
No, I love that. I think a couple things come up for me as you were talking through that. I think it's Simon Sinek who talks about that idea of clarity, and he talks about the concept of wayfinding, like when you're sailing, right? So like when you sail, you
Yep.
rarely sail in a straight line. You know where you're trying to get to, but the path you take is just the most efficient one you can given the situation and context you're in at the moment. And I think it's the clarity that lets people make the decisions that help them navigate when the straight line isn't possible. And let's be honest, it never is. The other thing that came up for me that I love, you talk about this connection between the values and the behavior. And I know one of the things we do, and it sounds like you do something similar, is we talk with organizations about for each value, what does failing look like and what does success look like, and a couple points in between. Because then not only can you evaluate your own culture and how you're doing, you can make it part of performance reviews, you can make it part of your one-on-ones, you can make it part of just your everyday conversation. So I think I really like what you're talking about doing. I think there's a lot of consistency between our two approaches. Maybe how do leaders know? So we talked about how to measure it when it's in place. What are some of the signs for a leader that their culture really is the problem?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of symptoms, but ultimately, if you have hit a plateau and you are finding that there's inconsistency across how people perform within your organization, it's likely a culture problem. I think it's
Hmm.
easy to assume that I made a bad hire or that this person just wasn't who they said or something occurred and this person failed. It's really easy to see it as an individual thing. But when there start
Right.
to become patterns where individuals across the organization are struggling, are not living up to the culture, are not able to make decisions, that's when you recognize, okay, this is a culture problem. And culture isn't just this fluffy thing that we
Right.
conceptualize, right? It's not just a theory. It's a
Right.
system. It is absolutely the functional system of your organization. We get really excited with like OKRs and EOS, and we forget
Yeah.
beyond that, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish and how we define goals. But how do we actually operate? That is missed in so many of those systems. And that at the core is what your culture is.
I think there might be an important distinction to call out in what you said there. Because you said look for the differences in performance, not
Mhm.
necessarily process. And I
Right.
like the way you chose your words because if you set your culture up right, you can give people a lot of leeway in process, but performance can remain consistent. Maybe give me a little bit about like
Absolutely.
what does that look like? How do leaders get to? Because so many leaders are focused on process. Like how can they let go of that and trust people to perform?
Right. Process is important, but people come first. I think that's really the distinction there. And we have this framework that we call the people process performance framework. And that's really the foundation of what we're trying to build. It always starts with your people because your people
Yeah.
create, enable, and optimize your process. Right. They're not two separate things where you have process here and people here. Your people are
Right.
the ones who make your process happen, make it better, they create, they innovate, they push your process to improve over time. And so if we just look at process, we typically miss the true root cause, which is people don't have clarity in how to make decisions. They don't know what good looks like. They don't know what they can or can't do. And they don't know
Yeah.
where we're going or why this matters. And
Yeah.
that's the gap. We think process will solve that, but typically it just shows the cracks beneath where people are struggling.
Yeah, and I think who was it? So you've got exposure to the military, so you might have heard of him. I think it's General Stanley McChrystal. Wrote
Yep.
Team of Teams, I think it is. He has that spectrum of
Yep.
leadership, the chess master to the gardener, which I
Yep.
love that spectrum, because what I hear you talking about is it feels very tactile for leaders. Like, they can wrap their heads around process, they can put their hands on process, they can control process, and that ends pushes them to that chess master side.
Yep.
Whereas the culture is more that gardener, like, my job is not to make all the decisions or to have all the great ideas. It's to create the environment where they can happen. I think that distinction is
Absolutely.
really powerful. Maybe the next area where I really do see people struggle, and I'm curious on your opinion, is around tools. So, like, when leaders
Mm.
start to walk away from process, a lot of times they walk right into tools rather than culture. If I could just get the right AI integration, if I could just find the right Jira instance, if I could set up, Asana to do the right thing, if I could just have the right tools, everything would be perfect. And I think you and I know that that doesn't work. Like, matter of fact, I think that often slows things down. So, how do you help leaders match culture, process, and tools?
Yeah. I mean, tools at the core are there to enable, right? The mission of the organization, they're there to influence performance, not necessarily there to slap on and take away all your people and let's replace them all with AI agents because it's cheaper
Yeah,
and more efficient and I don't have to manage them, right? Managing people's hard. What we see all the time is companies will throw in tools thinking that they can lean out their team, they can improve efficiency. And again, they ignore the people part and they throw
right.
the tool at the person and say, you have this square box, you're a round peg, figure it out, as
Yeah,
opposed to working with the people to understand what are the functions, where are you strong, where are you weak as a team, how are we functioning, and then where can we layer in tools to enable, to optimize and improve. But
right.
usually we think of it in a silo. We think, oh my gosh, this cool new AI tool is everything and anything. We're going to use it because it's going to make us better, faster, stronger. We throw it. And I'm a huge sports fan, so I love to think of sports. It's like if I have a hockey team, for example, I'm in Canada, so I'm always going to defer to hockey. If I have a
My
hockey
kids love
team,
hockey.
awesome. If I have a hockey team, there's this new set of skates that has come out, right? And they're top of the line. They're amazing. I'm going to give everyone a pair. I'm not going to check their sizes. I'm not going to check if they have
Mm,
preferences. I'm not going to make the
yeah,
distinction that the goalie probably needs different skates than the forward. We're just going to go with it and it's going to improve everything. Do we really think that that's
right.
going to have a measurable impact on the team? No, no. And so we have to really look at it from each of the functions, along with the goals and the objectives that we're trying to accomplish, and then where the tools fit in to enable people. That's the big
Yeah.
mistake that people make.
I feel like what we're talking about, and this is something that we talk about fairly often, is maybe a hierarchy: people, process, and then tools, in that order. And it's interesting because I think what I see so often out in the world is the exact opposite. Let's pick a tool, have that define our process, and then just hope our people fit in, right? So I love what you're
Yes.
saying, and it makes a lot of sense. Maybe here's the best way to wrap up, though. When you do have these leaders that are overwhelmed by the idea of scale, the tools that they have options to, all the change in the world, what are one or two, like, grounding principles that you really hope they walk away with?
Yeah. So for the CEO, for example, or the founder, the key leader in the organization, there's one reminder I try to give them because it's really easy to become overwhelmed in that situation, in that role. It holds a lot of weight. It's that being a boss is a job. Being a leader is something you earn. And so you earn it through your people, through the way that you support them and enable them. And it's not just a process or a job, right? It is a vocation. So that often allows them to step up beyond the process and the tools and remember the mission and the reason why they're in that seat in the first place. And then the second thing is the CEO has two jobs, two pillars of their role. And people overcomplicate this all the time, but it comes down to two things. One, it's to grow the company, and two, it's to set and maintain the culture. And if you're doing things that are outside of that or not aligned with those two pillars, you're probably working someone else's job.
Mm.
So if we come back to what is my vocation here and how am I going to earn this role of leadership? And then are the functions, are the jobs and tasks that I'm doing aligned with growing the company and setting and maintaining the culture? That's your grounding. That's your North Star.
Oh, man, Mickey, I've asked similar questions to a lot of people. I don't think I've ever gotten that simple of an answer, and that is a high praise, not anything else, because I think you're right. That is something we overcomplicate so often, and I think it gives leaders a really clear way to say, Am I doing the right thing? Am I in my lane? Am I paying attention to the signal and ignoring the noise kind of concept? So I love that. I'm curious though. I know you work with a lot of leaders. With our listeners here, if they feel like they could use your support in terms of leadership and scale, what's the best way for them to reach out and engage with you?
Yeah, head on over to loyaltyops.com. We have a really simple contact form. You can reach out, check out our services, and all sorts of resources. The other thing we have there are the playbooks on how to set your clear intent, as well as your cultural standards. You can snag those for free and start working on those immediately in your organization. So that would be the number one place I would send people to go.
Awesome. No, perfect. I may even have to check that out myself after this just to see what you all got.
Awesome.
Mickey, this has been fantastic. I love this conversation. I feel like I've learned a couple new things, which is the whole reason I do this. So I really appreciate your time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I love what you do. I'm such a fan and very much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and the listeners.
Awesome. Well, and speaking of the listeners, for everyone who's made it all the way to the end with us, while you're down there leaving that 5-star review, I'd love to hear, what are your leadership challenges? Where do you see tools or scale get complicated or overcomplicated? And what's your experience with dealing with that? I think this is a really great topic to have some conversation on, and I'd love to hear from you. Also, again, as always, if you know someone who's struggling with some of these concepts around leadership, scale, tools, culture, share this episode with them, introduce them to Mickey, and share her wealth of knowledge with them, and just kind of pay it forward. That said, Mickey, thank you again. For everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.